Alrighty, everybody, it's land battle tier list time. I'm not going to pretend I know too much about domination or campaign tier lists, but land battles, I feel pretty good about it. If you skip to the end of this video, see where your favorite faction ranks, then you have a problem with it, and comment without any context of what I talked about with that faction. Please don't fucking do that. It is super annoying and dumb, and I really hate seeing it. For example, like, if I post, High Elves as D tier, and someone in the comments is like, High Elves are the best spearmen in the game. You're an idiot. They're obviously A tier because their spearmen are so good. But then in the section, I said High Elves are D tier because their spearmen are really good, but their cavalry options are super limited, have no armor piercing, their monsters are pretty meh, and their lords are too expensive. I think they're D tier. Then you clearly didn't watch the video, and I don't give a fuck about your opinion. If you have a different opinion than mine, you actually listen to it, then that's fine. But I hate when people clearly don't listen, skip to the end, and then just write bullshit, dumb opinions. So, if you disagree with something, at least listen to it, so then you can respond accordingly. All right? All right. Gonna try to keep this short and sweet, so probably won't cover every single thing of every single faction, but I will give at least a gist of why I put it there. S tier is way too strong, overpowered, needs nerfs. A tier is slightly too strong, could use nerfs, but fine on its own. B tier is perfectly balanced. I think they're fine where they're at. Now, they could use buffs to some things, but they usually need nerfs to others to keep the faction where they're at. B is the desired balancing, in my opinion. C is slightly beneath balancing. Could use a couple buffs, but overall they are fine. And D tier is definitely needs buffs. You probably need to play much better than your opponent to win with these factions. Right? Right. Also, I will talk about most things as like an AI versus an AI of similar skill. Obviously, like, some people argue, wow, Demons of Chaos is so good because Hanadins is so good with them. Yeah, but Hanadins is a really fucking good player. You and I are not. So we will not make Demons of Chaos look nearly as good as he does. This is talking about general players. All right, enough preamble. Let's get on with it. Beastmen, where to put him, where to put him, where to put him? Probably C or B tier? C or B, C or B. Honestly, really like Beastmen right now. We'll go with B. Beastmen are in B tier. They're fine. They're fine. Could use some buffs. That's okay. If they got some nerfs in some areas, that would be disappointing, but overall, they're fine with where they're at. Centaurs are really strong. Their light cavalry game is good as it should be. Their lord options are in Warhammer 3. Taurox isn't nearly the beast he used to be, but they're okay. They have good Winds of Magic options. Their infantry are trash, but they're supposed to be. Their monsters are okay, but the Minotaur buffs really help them out. So Beastmen are B tier. They have as many good matchups as bad. Just need to avoid the S tier factions. Cathay in land battles. Oh god, it's hard. I'll go with S, though I will say Cathay has been getting abused a lot recently, so maybe they aren't S. They are S, maybe A. Maybe A, but I am going to put them in S tier for now. Jade Warriors are still a very, very strong frontline. Peasant Long Spearmen do more damage than any other Spearman unit in their cost bracket. Shielded Armored Archers are good. They completely dominate the skies with Longmas. They have great Lord options. Terracotta Sentinels can do a lot of work. Their cannons are the only cannons doing it in the game, so their long range, their medium range, and their melee game are all on point. The only way to beat them is using your magic better than they can use theirs, but theirs are also rather potent with Ancestral Warrior Summon and Towns of Night. So Cathay, S tier, though they're more like at A++. Bretonia, ooh boy, I'm gonna put them in C. I'm going to put Bretonia in C tier. Bretonia does need some love. They aren't useless. Their cavalry is still okay. It just hasn't been feeling the love as of late. Their high tier cavalry has been seeing some good play, especially the Grail Guardians have been making a comeback, but their air force is lacking. It could use a little bit of love. Their lord options need a lot of love. Their lord options feel rather weak. And their infantry are understandably weak as they're supposed to be, but they're also cheap to compensate. So Bretonian infantry and cav is okay. Their flying cav, their lords, their Winds of Magic options all need a little bit of help because the Lore of Life is still good, but Dwellers took a pretty big hit, and Bretonia was quite reliant on Dwellers, so I'm going to put them in C tier for now. Dark Elves. This one is pretty easy to place. They are an A. They are just beneath S tier, but they are an A. They're keeping up with all the Demons and Undead factions. Scourge Chariots, Malekith, Malice, Darkblade, Soul Stealer are what's keeping them in the meta right now, but even without those OP things, their front lines are good, Shades are good, Dark Riders are great, Cold One Knights are okay, so they just have a lot of strong tools. Now, there are good, large sections of their roster that are entirely worthless, but they aren't key components. The key Dark Elf roster is keeping them in A tier. They have a lot of good matchups and a lot of plenty winnable matchups, very few bad ones. Dwarves. I'm honestly tempted to put dwarves in A, but for now I will rest the dwarves in B tier. Thoric Ironbrow is carrying the Lord slot of this faction heavily, but he can give AoE better than Perfect Vigor because he can regenerate your Vigor while you're fighting. Strong, sturdy frontline, minus blasting charges still doing great work. Slayers are excellent. Dwarves overall in a really solid spot. They have the same weaknesses they've always had, but they seem to matter less on ultra unit size. So B tier for the dwarves. Watch out for them. I think they're a little underrated by most people. Empire, also going in the B tier category, maybe A. Yeah, actually, you know what? I'll go with A just because of War Wagons. They would be in B tier without War Wagons. Their roster is relatively balanced at the moment. I really wouldn't recommend that many nerfs for them except for War Wagons. But with proper abuse of War Wagons, you can easily put them up in A tier. But they are like a B++, A-, so I can see that one going either way. But I'm going to personally put them in A tier. They are rather strong if you abuse the broken models they have. Green beans, I think, are C tier, I think. But I could see arguments for them moving up to B. I think they're B or C. I'm going to put them in C. Their Lord options are pretty meh. Wurzag has been getting a lot of love recently, but that is if he is against the faction that does not bring Spirit Leech, Fireball, or Blue Fire of Tzeentch, because those will all delete him very, very quickly. If you can't take Wurzag, your Lord options get rather limited rather fast. Grom isn't the hero he used to be. Azhag's still expensive and can't take his goddamn items on his mount. So, really limits your Lord options. Outside the Lord options, the faction is doing well, but it's low leadership, so it relies on its Lord pretty heavily to stay alive, and with the Lord options being subpar, green beans. They're okay. Lizard Men. Oh, that is a toughie. I could see arguments for them being anywhere from C to A. I'm going to put them in B. I think they're fine where they're at. Chameleon Skinks are still very good. I think I just saw Loopy use them rather well recently, but in the hands of skilled players, Lizardmen are still good. They have really good Winds of Magic options through their Slans. Outside of that, it gets a little iffy as far as magic goes, but good Lord options, good dinosaurs, solid front lines, decent skirmishers. In Feral Cold Ones, getting the buffs, being only 450 gold, armor piercing, all that good stuff. Feral Cold Ones are great. Outside of that, their Cav Core is a little weak. And they don't have, like, traditional archers. They just have skirmishers who can not put out the DPS archers can. But overall, Lizardmen are fine. B tier. Tomb Kings. Tomb Kings, Tomb Kings. I'm going to go with majority opinion on this. My personal opinion, I think Tomb Kings are weaker than people think they are right now. But a lot of really good players are playing Tomb Kings, so I'll admit that there must be some mojo still there. After the nerfs they took, I thought they moved from S down to B. But most people make them still look at an A level. Arkan the Black, still an insane lord. Some people have been getting good use out of Cetra recently, and Kotep is the sleeper third lord who is still pretty good if you take him, honestly. Melee Ushabti rushes have been strong recently. Nahkar Warriors are also rising up the ranks. Skeleton Chariot's still strong. Ushabti Great Bow's incredible. Sepulchral Stalkers, very good. People have been trying to use the Necro Knights. I'm not super sold on that. But in general, Tomb Kings is just a well-rounded roster, and they do have very strong mechanics right now in the Undead Crumbling, tons of healing, yada, yada, yada. Very good. Khorne. Khorne. What to do with you, Khorne? I'm tempted to put him in B tier, but I think that's just me playing against some very high tier Khorne one-trick players. I'm going to put him in C for most of us in the populace, because I am also not super great with Khorne. Khorne is heavily reliant on the Minotaur buffs he just received, plus his dogs and a little bit of skirmish cav play. Blood Penguin and a couple other really good players have been using a lot of his elite cav, including the Arwar Skull Crushers and Blood Crushers, to good effect, but in general, Khorne still suffers from the usual stuff. His infantry is trashed here for some reason. Having no spells is much more of a hindrance than you would think, and in land battles, knowing that Khorne wants to get a bunch of kills is usually pretty abusable. So, it's just if the Minotaur's dogs can carry you through the game. Valkia is also solid. Kislev. Kislev is B tier. Yeah, I think that's pretty solid. Their frontline options are limited due to their expense. Armored Kossars are nice, but they are 650 gold, so they're relatively elite. If you think of things like Empire Spearmen, you can get 2 of them for every Armored Kossar. Now, Streltsy are very good. The cav options for Kislev are all right, especially the Cospite Dervishes I find incredible. Little Groms are good. The Winds of Magic options are poor, but their Lord slot is never a problem. They have a lot of good Lord options, whether you want cheap or whether you want an expensive duelist like Boris Ursus. Can't go wrong with Kislev. Now, Kislev is currently a little one-note. It's usually pike and shot builds with a bit of cav support, but they are good at it, and they do fine. High Elves. After the buffs they received, even though some High Elf mains don't love the way they were buffed, they did get buffed, and they're currently performing at about an A tier level. I'd say A or B++, but I'll put them in A. Lather and Seaguard are incredible cost value at the moment. Illyrian Reavers are also very, very good for the cost. With the Martial Prowess buffs, the Illyrian Reavers can get a lot of good stats before they take enough damage to knock that off. Aside from that, the Spearman frontline can hold forever. We have been seeing a bit of Shadow Warrior, Shadow Walker meta rising back up for those skirmishers doing a lot of damage, and their Lord slots have a lot of nice units with Alariel for healing up the Fireborn or something, to Imric getting regrowths and trying to carry a whole game himself. The High Elves have been feeling really good recently. They're all around strong. The only weaknesses I would say they have is their monsters are still performing but with enough healing, their monsters even pan out fine. Also, their cav isn't the best in the world, but it's okay. Skaven, I will also put in A tier. Skaven are not having the best time in the world with the undead and demon factions being strong, but once those are off the plate, they really shine. They beat up on anybody lower than them in the tier list by quite a lot, and they can even take on Class-esque Thay. Poisonwind Globes, doing a lot of damage at the moment with the way explosion damage works. Ikit Claw is still strong, even after the nerfs to Flensing Ruin. He is strong in a lot of other ways. So, with a plethora of strong Lord options, from Snitch, Ikit, all those sorts of things, Tretch is still there if you want a cheap Lord. Their heroes are okay. Their infantry options are actually overperforming, in my opinion. A lot of Skaven slaves are lasting longer than you think they should on ultra unit size. So, Skaven frontline overperforming. Lord options are very good. Their monsters got some pretty huge buffs coming into Game 3 with Rat Ogres taking 100 gold decrease per unit. Wolf Rats are also performing well. If you watch any of Strat Games builds, you'll see that. Weapons teams are always really good. The only thing that they're suffering from right now is artillery underperforming in Game 3, but they got enough buffs. I would say they're A tier, even with artillery underperforming. So, Skaven, up there in A. Norska, also up there in A. You might be like, A is getting a little crowded. Well, it is. There's a lot of good factions right now, but we just hit a rather strong patch. Norska, A tier, not a whole lot to say about them. Their skirmish cap is still good, though the cost increases did hit them a little bit. Their skin wolves are fine. They've been struggling to make some value, but paired with the dogs, and Norscan dogs are very, very good, they do fine. The front line of Norska has gotten a lot of buffs with Marauder champions, and basic Marauders performing quite well. Norska is doing strong there. I have been playing around with Famir a bit recently, and I think they're very good. Throg is an excellent lord. He is underrated in my opinion, and their Lore of Magic options are some of the best. Death, Fire, Metal, all great things. Also Shadows if you want Pit of Shades. They only struggle from not having Heavy Cav and Chariots underperforming at the moment, so they don't love that as much. But Norska, I think pretty solidly A tier. Yeah. Nurgle! Nurgle is a C tier in my opinion. I would even say D tier if it wasn't for their Lord and Hero slots. This entire roster is underperforming except for Blank Lord and Double Exalted Hero. Or Blank Lord, Cultist, and Exalted Hero. It's usually carried pretty heavily by Kugoth, maybe Festus if you get into a blob fight, maybe a basic Chaos Sorcerer Lord of Nurgle with 2 Exalted Heroes and heals them up. But Exalted Heroes are OP, they are overperforming. The rest of the Nurgle roster is really not doing that great. Some people argue Plague Bearers are incredible, but yeah, if you walk up to the slowest infantry in the game and then fight it in melee, sure, it'll probably beat you, but my problems with it is they're 700 gold, they're low armor, they're not shielded, they disintegrate away, and they're, slow as hell. So yeah, if you get in a melee fight, sure, Plague Bearers might win, but it's really easy to not fight them. Ogres! A lot of ogre mains. They have a passionate fan base, kind of like the dwarves in the days of old. If you're an ogre lover, man, you're an ogre lover. I'm going to put them in C tier. Now, before you get all pissed at me, my main reason for putting the ogres in C tier are twofold. Everything great about the ogres is fine, right? You can talk about those for days. Cool. Stonehorns are great. Cool. Saber-Tusk packs are great. Cool. Actually, there's 3 things. I just remember with the Saber-Tusk packs. 4 things. 4 reasons they're in C tier. All right, and the fact that it keeps expanding is important. 1 is jank. There are some janky-ass units on this roster, and if they perform how they're supposed to, they could do great, but man, if they don't, they suck ass. Mornfang Cav looking at you. Ogre Bull's looking at you when you guys fail a charge and you just stand around and do nothing. It's pretty brutal. Stonehorns, when you just walk around, it's pretty brutal. So unit jank really hurts this roster. 2 is kind of on the unit jank. Infinite Rampage makes your only dog unit the Saber-Tusks. In certain games, worthless. If it just infinite rampages off the map for literally no reason, you're completely fucked. 3, your Lord options are terrible. If you take the Slaughtermaster of the Great Maw, you're fine. If you want to take any other Lord to get the Fire Belly, you're paying a lot of money for a pretty meh Lord. The other problem with the ogres is everything on the roster worth it is large, meaning you just take anti-large stuff or just shoot at them, and it's pretty easy to get through. Now, they're C tier. They're not abysmal, but I think a lot of their jank needs to be worked out so units perform as they should, and then the large stuff won't matter so much. But for now, putting them in C for most players. There's some ogre specialists out there that play them very well. Cool. We're not all ogre specialists. Slaanesh, putting them up in A tier. Devoted Marauders are incredibly strong as a frontline for very cheap. 500 gold apiece. They all have ITP. Everything on this roster has ITP, physical resistance, and incredible speed. House Riders of Slaanesh are well known to be some of the best light cav in the game, though that is fine. Slaanesh does suffer in several areas. They don't have the best Lord options. I mean, Sigvald's good, but outside of him, they all have problems. It's not that they're bad, they're just not OP. Their hero slots are pretty worthless, and yeah, their single entities aren't particularly great. Chariots aren't particularly great, but usually Marauder, Chaos Warrior, Hellstrider spam can get you through any game. So they're an A tier, but I honestly am tempted to put them down into B. Vampire Coast. I'm going to put them in S tier. I'm tempted to put them in A, but enough Vampire Coast haters they've gotten through to me with their arguments. Vampire Coast is going to be in S tier. Bombers overperforming both in the bats and in the bomber gunnery mobs. Positions can clear out infinite infantry very, very quickly. A front line of pistol mobs for only 300 gold can also do a lot of damage to anybody trying to skirmish you. And if they straight up melee rush you, then you're going to get bombed in the face while you get shot by the pistols. So their front line is overperforming at the moment. If they don't use their front line to kill you, they have backline sweepers in the depth guard pole arms that can kill a lot of stuff. 500 gold animated hulks to block up cavalry, 500 gold unbreakable dogs. Their mortars are still doing quite well. Just in general, the Vampire Coast have a lot of great tools and good winds of magic. They're very strong right now. I think they're probably the worst of the S tiers, but I would put them in S tier. All right, Tzeentch. Tzeentchy. Last of the A tiers, I promise. Last of the A tiers is going to be Tzeentch. Yes. Tzeentch is probably A tier, maybe A+. Their shields mechanic, the only reason I put them in A and not S, honestly, is high-level players are different than the rest of us, right? If it was high-level players, I'd put them in S. But for the rest of us, A tier. Blue Horrors and Pink Horrors are fine. They're good units that kind of function as archers. They're okay. The Tzeentch frontline is It's fine. Tzeentch is heavily carried by their Lord slot and their bullshit models for their bird units, making them impossible to trap and punish their mistakes. Their Winds of Magic usage is incredible, though that is the faction thematic thing, so I think that's fine. The only problem other than that is the shields can make abusive gameplay very annoying. Their soul grinders are very powerful right now, and tournament rules have limited them to 1, but in quick battles and stuff you can take 2, and that is a death sentence for anybody you are kiting. Tzeentch kite is very, very strong if you are careful with it. So they're going to go into A tier. Demons of Chaos, I am putting in D tier. Now, again, at the very, very top levels, you might be like, but Hanniden's makes them look so good. Yes, but I am not sold that basic players can make them look that good. Demons of Chaos heavily rely on Bluefire and Lord Micro. The rest of their roster underperforms very badly. They also rely on Fleshhounds to carry them through most things. Their front line almost always consists of just Nurglings and Furies and stuff, and they die instantaneously. Their roster is expensive and just not very good. Also, your army passive is random for what 3 you get, so it's very hard to plan around the army passive. In general, Demons of Chaos just struggling from how punishing the demon damn it, I always forget the thing. It's not crumbling, so it's undead. The unsummoning, unbinding, there it is. Demonic unbinding is too punishing. They just die instantaneously. The demons roster is rather lacking. Vampire counts going up in S tier, baby. Let's go. Vampire counts are in S tier. Their healing is way too strong. They have a ton of great Lord options, including the Blood Dragon Lord, who can get up to 1,000 armor-piercing weapon strength, which is insane. As I said, their healing is incredible. Graveguard were given magic damage for some reason and stat buffs. Their corpse carts give incredible stat buffs. Most of their important units, Vargeist, Blood Knights, Vargulfs, their Lords, all their corpse cart variants, their Mortis engines, the Sternsmen, trying to think of the other stuff. All of these things have their own self-propelling regen, plus the regenerative auras of the corpse carts and the regenerative passive of the Lore of Vampires. Their summons are the longest lasting in the game. It's just the vampire counts are overtuned right now. They are way too strong. They are by far the most global banned faction in the entire game. Vampires, very spooky, very scary. Warriors of Chaos, it was hard to put them between S and A, but I will put them in S. We have seen a decrease in Warriors of Chaos popularity recently, but that does seem to be just a popularity thing. Whenever they are taken, they look as strong as ever. With Be'lakor still being an incredible lord even after the nerfs, Sigvald still a fine lord if you want to go cheaper and get a Blue Fire of Tzeentch caster. They have some of the best parts of the Tzeentch roster in a Tzeentch caster without having the rest of it. They can also get Hellstrider, some of the best light cav in the game. They have some of the best skirmish cav in the game, even after the cost increases. And they can just get Chaos Warriors, which hold the front line forever. They have some other weaknesses in their roster. Their heavy cav isn't incredible. Their monsters aren't incredible. But the diversity this roster can bring, the variance of builds this roster can bring, and the potential for real abusive blobs in quick battles makes me think that for generic players, Warriors of Chaos is probably S tier. At the top levels of play, I could see the debates between S and A, but if you face Warriors of Chaos on quick battles, I'm sure you're about as excited as facing Vampire counts. Last faction, and honestly least, is Wood Elves. Wood Elves, I would vote, are the worst faction in the game currently for land battles. Now, again, there are some Wood Elf experts that can really put you through the ringer, but overall, you definitely need to overplay your hand to win with these guys. Their Lord options generally suck right now. Sisters of Twilight are not the OP killers they used to be. In fact, they are probably a little underpowered at the moment. Durthu is okay if you can get a duel with him, but he is very expensive. And other than that, the Lords are meh. Some of the generic Lords are less meh than others. Hero slot is also lacking. The cavalry portion is okay, not performing that great anymore. The archers are fine. They're good still, but the front line is underperforming, and the Cav took a hit too. So the archers can't carry this entire faction, and their monsters, as always, are terrible, but that's kind of the faction's identity. So Wood Elves really just not strong enough in enough places. They have strong archers, that is it. And even their archers aren't, like, super OP anymore. They're just good. Like, yeah, good, not great. Nothing else about them is great. Wood Elves, struggling. They need some help, probably in the infantry department. Probably, because their infantry needs to be not dog shit. I know it's not what their faction's known for, but like straight up, anything above a Dryad is overcosted currently. And the War Dancer buffs did just nothing, so yeah. Anyway, that is the tier list. Again, if you have disagreements, put them in the comments. I would love to hear them. I would love to hear your, thoughts, like really pull out an argument. The two things I hate is, wow, Dark Elves are C tier. You're an idiot. Okay, cool. Good analysis, bro. A lot I can really interact with there. And repeating something I said, but you didn't know I said it because you didn't listen, and then disagreeing with me without having context. Like, wow, Skaven A tier, fucking Skaven bias. He doesn't even know that they can route in C tier. Wow, C tier, they can route. And it's like, okay, dude, but I kind of talked about that. Like, their infantry are way overperforming. They route, but they route too slowly, and you do a lot of damage. I don't know. Shit sucks. If you don't like it, I guess too bad for you. But goodbye. Roar. Subscribe. Yes, yes.